Hey guys, like, comment, subscribe. The NHL season started yesterday, and there are already trade rumors coming out. It apparently was noted by the Florida Panthers general manager that Keith Yandle is not in the team's plans, or he told Keith Yandle that he's not in the team's plans for the upcoming season. And as a result, Yandle, obviously understandably, a guy who consistently is a top four defenseman, I believe, had it still over 40 points last year, was on pace for in a full season, um, randomly gets told he's not part of the team's plans anymore. So, of course, he wants out of the Florida situation, growing unhappy there, knows he deserves NHL minutes and probably top four minutes, as mentioned. So, just quickly going to do a video on a couple places he might go, and obviously what to make of it for the Panthers. For the Panthers, it's obviously a bit of a confusing kind of situation because for a couple of years you look at that team and it looks like they're on the up and coming. They have guys, obviously between Huberdeau, Barkov, Aaron Ekblad, etc., who we know what they are already, and then they have guys like Dadonov who go up and they surprise there. They have guys who are consistently maybe overperforming like Mike Hoffman, or at least performing to their highest level like Hoffman, and they just consistently are getting rid of these guys without issue. They don't seem like they believe that they can compete for a Stanley Cup immediately, even though they may be able to compete for a playoff spot. And they're not taking that as seriously, I guess, as maybe some other teams would. And therefore, they're just willing to, I guess, move their assets and kind of accept whatever it is. So, with that being said, the fact that Yandel is already 34, he is somewhat on the decline. He's essentially purely an offensive defenseman. He does have great leadership and experience, which obviously adds its own element. But in terms of being able to help a team, quote, defensively, that's not something that he's going to be able to do as much. So he does need to probably go somewhere that has a few defensive defensemen already in place. And as well, on top of that, has a salary cap that could actually fit him in. Of course, we could look at trades where maybe other teams are able to package in another salary they don't want anymore, and they just do a swap based off that, and each team maybe gets a player they could use a bit more than they planned. But just kind of immediately hearing the rumors, I can't think of too many of them off the top of my head. So that's why I'm going to avoid teams like that. If I had to pick, maybe a team like Boston, who obviously loses Zdeno Chara. They do have a decent defensive core as is, and obviously they don't bring back Chara on the basis that they believe in that core. But regardless, having an experienced defenseman like Yandel can never hurt a team. But I think a couple more likely candidates would probably be probably a team like Detroit, if he's willing to go there. Detroit, obviously, a team that I don't think they're in a position to contend necessarily, but in terms of needing a veteran presence, in terms of him getting playing time, being a key contributor there, I definitely think Yandel is a good fit there. They do have the salary cap, and they also do have Franz Nielsen, who has a pretty hefty salary in his own right. So if they wanted to do some type of exchange in that regard, just straight up, and maybe Detroit throws in a later pick as well, or vice versa, maybe even that's something I could genuinely see getting done. I don't know if it improves Detroit to be a playoff team, but I mean, they already know what they have on the offensive end. It's really just in terms of having a full six defenseman, seven defenseman core that they're lacking. So Yandel could obviously be a potential fit there. Another similar team in that regard is obviously Los Angeles, where aside from Drew Doughty, they could use some help on the defensive end. But at the same time, I don't know if another offensive defenseman is what they need. And they already have so much experience there that I don't think Yandel improves them that much either. So that's not a team that I would rule in. I would rule in even a team like St. Louis more than Los Angeles, because they are close to being able to fit Yandel into their salary cap. I know they did bring in Justin Falk last year, but at the same time, they did unexpectedly lose Jay Bomeister. due to his unfortunate incident on the bench that forced him to retire prior to the season. So I think losing a guy like Bouwmeester kind of on a sudden notice, Yandle is a great replacement for him. So that's something that I could see St. Louis going towards. And they also did just sign Mike Hoffman, I believe, for relatively cheap. So clearly they're still looking to be a competitive team as they should based on that roster. So I could definitely see him potentially going there. But again, that's just a maybe. And then I guess the last option I could see, and I would even say the most likely option at that, is the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators are a team who have the most salary cap of any of the teams. And not only that, they're actually a team that throughout this offseason, they've been extremely active on the trade market. And yes, you could say they've already brought in a few defensemen, but like I said earlier in the video, they brought in a lot of defensive defensemen, which is Yando's opposite. So bringing in obviously guys like Josh Brown, Mike Riley, already having Zadisev there. So if you just look at that core aside, I would say from really Shabbat and Brandstrom, there's no one this year who's going to play, and Brandstrom probably won't even play the whole year. So aside from Shabbat, there's no one who's purely, I would say, an offensive defenseman. Maybe you could say Wallinen as well, but I think Yandle adds a very different element regardless. And he adds an experience factor. That team brought in a lot of players because they obviously feel like they're getting towards being able to compete for a playoff spot. And Keith Yandle would definitely add to that discussion. And with all these guys they brought in, yes, there was a lot of salary involved between guys like Derek Stepan, and etc. But at the same time, guys like Stepan only have 1 year left. The Galchenyuk signing only 1 year. Not that Galchenyuk was a lot of money, but just kind of, for example, if you look through that team, there's 5 or 6 guys off the top of my head who are on expiring contracts that do have a pretty significant salary. So it's not something long term that's going to hurt them. And I mean, even with having Yandle, they have 10 million or over 10 million free at the moment. They add another 6 million. They still have 4 million free, which is a lot more than a lot of teams. So I think the Ottawa Senators would be fine in that regard, and they should genuinely consider making this move if they could get Keith Yandle relatively cheap. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. I definitely hope to hear more on that. And definitely give us a subscribe as well. We'll be back with some more content soon, especially with the NHL season just getting underway.